Welcome, everyone, to the Impact Tribe podcast, where we meet, greet, and learn all about innovators who are bringing a positive impact to the world. My name is Ashley Bright, and I'm the host, and today we are joined by Porter Harris, who is the CEO of Power Global. Power Global is on a mission to launch products and services that ensure access to clean, reliable, and affordable energy for all. So, Porter, thank you so much for being here. It's great to see you again.
Yeah, definitely. Always a pleasure being in your presence here and discussing these things. We always seem to go on forever, so it's always a good time.
Well, and I think there's, we've got this mutual connection and this awesome do which I'm parting today.
Yeah, I like that. It's a little tighter than I do, so it's.
Well, there you go. It's because we were camping over the weekend, and I had to then get rid of the camping funk, so we did this. So.
Just shave it away.
There you go. Yeah, we discovered that it gets very, very cold in Benson, Arizona in the evening. And we weren't really as prepared as we should have been. So, awesome. So anyway, my wife has pointed out to me, she said, we will never make that mistake again.
Yeah, no, the desert definitely has its extremes, right? So
Definitely. So remind me, when did we chatted? It's got to be like 7-8 months ago, more than that.
Yeah, I have no clue. This last year I have no time.
Time is compressed and
exactly. It's just living one continuous day here, I think.
I can relate. Yeah. I think we've all had those moments of sadness filled with sort of joy and new discoveries and all that good stuff. So I hopefully there's been learnings.
Yeah, no, it's been all over the place, right? It's been impactful in the whole scale of things. So no, definitely, I think it was painful, beneficial year.
Yeah,
I think most people would say that they got something out of this last year. So
I hope so.
I think so.
Hold on just one sec here. I'm going to adjust something. Let's see. All right. I don't know how to adjust that, so I'm just going to leave it alone. Famous last words. All right. So first of all, Porter, why don't you tell us, I kind of gave you that very boilerplate intro. And so why don't you tell us a little bit more about Global Power, or Power Global, excuse me, and what parts I missed in that little clean intro.
So I think the key focus is on enabling modern technologies or electrification technologies for emerging markets. And we're focused on bringing lithium-ion battery technology and pretty much everything that goes along with that from electrification standpoint to markets like India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, certain countries within Africa, Southeast Asia. So and really, I think enabling these technologies where it's pretty much needed the most. The primary method of transportation in these countries, because they're highly populated areas, is typically a two-wheeled vehicle like a motorcycle or auto rickshaw or tuk-tuk or however you want to say it, three-wheeler. And they're the largest polluters of petrol and diesel as well. So we actually have created a retrofit kit for auto rickshaws to start. That converts an existing auto rickshaw to a performance electric vehicle and enables that at about 30% the cost of a new auto rickshaw and saving the driver between 25 and 35% a day in operating costs. So not only is it a clean solution, but it's also an economic and affordable solution. So the goal was to create a solution that would be economically beneficial despite whether or not it was clean or not.
Wow. That's it sounds like a significant challenge you've taken on there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think with I'm not. I've been to India a few times, but working outside of a country other than my own is definitely been, I think, the biggest learning lesson over the last year for sure. Um, Been putting definitely a lot of trust into in the people I'm meeting over there and bringing onto the team and all that good stuff. But the cultural differences, the way that the business is done, human interactions, learning all these things has definitely been, um, you know, part of that learning curve. So, but
So, so tell me, how did you sort of come to discover this problem, or given that you are from the States here, and how did that kind of come to pass?
yeah, so about 4 years ago, 5 years now, co-founded a company called Romeo Power, and we were focused um, on bringing the same thing, focused on emerging markets and energy, and bringing energy to these markets that don't have access to reliable energy or any energy whatsoever. So, um, and we traveled throughout Haiti, India, various other countries, and that's really firsthand. I saw really just how in a lot of way privileged we are here in the Western world. What do we have? Maybe the power go out for a day tops once a year, if that. These countries, you got power going out pretty much every day for anywhere between 10 minutes to hours. So in some areas they just don't even have. It's not even a priority, right? The priority is food, clothing, shelter, the bare necessities of life. So, um, you know, there's not really a huge demand to get that going in a lot of these areas. So, and so, from that experience there, and then leaving that job about what is that, about 2 years ago now, and starting Power Global, I knew that this was the focus I wanted to do. In this market, just because I kind of saw it as low hanging fruit to bring this and enable this technology within these regions.
Got it. Okay. And so, question: are you, in terms of the investment you're getting in order to make this happen? Are you is that coming from those regions, or is that coming from the United States and this part of the world?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think in the beginning, from an angel investment, seed investment standpoint, I found out the hard way that it was best to find local investors, and I found a couple entrepreneur gentlemen that were interested in what we were doing. They're actually from India, but they have created a successful business, sold that business, and living here in the States, and was introduced to them, and so that's really what kicked us off. But then, I realized that at a certain point, kind of super angels would be, the most. I mean, hardware is a very expensive game, and so finding larger sums or people interested in investing larger amounts is kind of key. And kind of a super angel type of investor after that seemed to be more beneficial and more on the impact investing side, or someone really interested in clean tech. I mean, it has to be really lined up with the mission. I mean, straightforward VC just interested in making money. This is not really their sweet spot here. So, and ultimately, that would have been a conflict of values, anyways, right? We really want to work out with the people that I don't have to convince that this is an awesome thing to be doing, right? They need to be believing in it from the beginning. So, we're now going into or finishing up our A round within the next couple of weeks. We have a few parties I can't disclose, but it looks like we're actually oversubscribed here, so it's looking pretty good.
That's great. That's great. And so, has that been, not to obviously get specifics, but is that still coming primarily from people that they've either from there or they've lived there, that have a real familiarity with it and the challenge that's there?
Not so much. I find that India is a very practical country, especially from when it comes to investment, and they want to see revenues. They want to see a working business. They're less likely to invest in a dream, a vision, kind of like the Western way of investing, right? It's, they see the dream, they see the vision, and you want to invest in that without having to, scrounge around for, monthly revenues or whatever it is. I mean, it's like I'm not in this business to make, $20,000 of revenue a month, right? I'm in this business to really make an impact, and with that impact comes, the revenues and larger, valuations and all this good stuff. But, from that culture standpoint, I haven't met any investors that were really interested in investing in the dreams. It was always, okay, well, what are your revenues like? Oh, well, come back when you have revenues. I was like, well, we're actually looking at this a different way, right? I hired a couple, consultants and now advisors to do full strategy analysis on the market, look at and develop the right solution. I mean, really doing a lot of background research, right? And that's where that initial funds went into, is really making sure that we come up with the right solution for this market, the right price point, and seeing if we really can make an impact in this. So, that was where our effort was in the background research versus just scrounging around for, quick revenues that, okay, great, I got revenues coming in, but is that really going to accelerate this thing to make the biggest impact? So
it's interesting, because I remember years ago hearing an investor, and he was speaking to a bunch of, young kind of entrepreneurs, very, excited and anxious. And he made the point that, when you seek funds, you're asking someone to share in your dream. And so there better be alignment. And I think it's interesting. You've sort of not really dispelled it so much, but you're saying, like, in this particular case, there's a very practical component to it. It has to work. There has to be revenue. But I would imagine, too, there's also this awareness of the problem, this real clear understanding.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It has to be properly defined right up front. I mean, the biggest thing going into Power Global, I think, from lessons learned and really seeing the culture that we've developed in the United States specifically, that's what I know most, right? A leader of a company should never be in a point to question whether or not a decision should be made for, the human element or the cash element, right? And so I think that's, ever putting someone in that position, I think, is the worst thing. So Power Global is actually a public benefit corporation first and foremost, which takes that decision right out, so you immediately know that you need to act on the human element first before profits. And I think this is the way that most companies should be going and focusing on, because, this is how we make a society that's beneficial for all, right? I mean, I think that this is really where corporations are heading. I see a lot more, mission-driven groups and investments, and people want to do more. I mean, that's the thing, is when you're doing something for other people that's a true benefit, the money follows, right? And that's how you create these lasting enterprises that like I hope to be outlived by what I'm building now. I mean, I think that's the true measure of a successful company, and it's not necessarily bringing in the most amount of cash, right? I mean, who wants to live for that? That's not within my interest. I mean, maybe I just have at a certain point, I don't need to be living the yacht lifestyle,
And I think we've probably all seen the downside of that short-minded kind of quarterly approach to how we run and grow a company. But with that said, I mean, have you gotten really comfortable now with really finding the right kind of people that want to align with that, so you don't even waste your time with others? Or what was that process like in terms of, encountering the people that's still in that mindset of, like, show me the numbers, show me the money, how quickly can I get out of this thing?
Yeah,
I really understanding of the vision.
I mean, there's definitely that aspect. And it's so funny coming to mind. When working at SpaceX, and someone asked Elon once what was his biggest regret, and it was basically this answer was like, not hiring people that really believed in the mission. And so I'm paraphrasing. It was something to that effect.
Yeah.
But it really is true. Like being polarizing like this, and really just saying this is our definition. Like we want mission first, and then I mean, you have to be obviously very competent. We're only hiring the best, but once you get that, I don't have to drive people forward, right? If someone's joining the company, this is like something they're passionate about. They want to be there. It's really, to me, that's the ideal, right? It's I see it as like I'm providing this medium for people. I mean, it's kind of cliche and a little kind of cheesy, but it's like living a dream within a dream. Like people can come work here and focus on what they want to do in their dream and pursuing that dream. And really, I'm just providing this medium that has this set, value that everyone knows is clearly defined, right? And that's the thing is, when I'm putting job recs out there and hiring people, when it clicks. I mean, it's like two opposite polarity magnets being attracted to each other, right? But when it doesn't, it's two polarities right the same. It's avoiding each other at all costs. So I think it's perfect. I don't I found that really smart people, but they don't believe in the mission. They just end up poisoning the culture within your business, right? And no, it just makes it miserable for everybody. So I mean, the best thing you can do with your company is get rid of those people as soon as possible if they end up in your company, first of all. So I'm just starting off just clearly defining and be completely open about what the company values. And I think sometimes maybe people will not be totally sure about what they want and kind of sneak in, but it doesn't last for long, so yeah.
And I would imagine that this isn't it's not like you're running a conventional organization that's solving a conventional problem. It requires a level, I think, of vision and people buying into that, because you are charting new territory, by definition of the problem you're trying to solve. And you mentioned SpaceX, so I'm curious, what's your background? You mentioned sort of the work you were doing in those parts of the country that kind of exposed you to the need for this. What's sort of your background as it relates to this tech and this whole industry?
Yeah, I've been in energy systems for about 14 years now. Started off at Lawrence Livermore National Lab working on pulse power systems. Basically just storing a lot of energy and releasing it as fast as possible for various research applications. And, from there went on to satellite battery research and various other things, working at, I think, one of the key locations with AeroVironment, which is really the modern day pioneers of electrification. They did the Impact, which was the EV1 prototype for GM. And, I mean, they were doing power processing longer than pretty much anyone else. And then, so I was working there on level 3 fast chargers and battery systems and, hybrid power systems for hand-launched drones. I mean, they have a little bit of a military wing to them. And then went to SpaceX and, worked with the teams there and led the team as a responsible engineer for the Dragon battery that docked with the International Space Station and the F9 rocket battery. And so just a lot of, from space to aerospace to automotive battery design and systems. And most recently, Romeo Power, which was kind of tier 1 automotive supplier for, it was a lot of supercar stuff and a lot of different automotive things. And now it's really just settled down to looking like Class 8 trucking plus. So, yeah, I guess I can't get away from lithium-ion batteries now at this point. So I tried to do that after Romeo, but it just pulled me back into it again.
They pulled you back in. It's interesting you mentioned the EV1, because I remember when I was in college going to an unveiling or a demo or whatever you want to call it at whatever that main park is right in downtown Pasadena, right next to that beautiful old hotel. And I remember way back when just thinking like, this is incredible. And then as soon as it was there, it was gone. And then there was this like 10, 15-year hiatus where it was just like nothing was going on. And then I think that's where, well, somewhere in the midst there, that's where Tesla and everybody else said.
Oh, I mean, that's the thing is like, Tesla really spun everything on its head, just basically making electric cars sexy and cool. I mean, that's ultimately what it was, a total perception thing, right? I remember being a kid and I'd be like, I saw the commercials for, the EV1. I mean, here in California, right, they're playing it, right? So, and I thought, man, how cool would that be to be riding in a car and have like no sound, but the wheels on the road. And I was talking to my friends, they're like, that's stupid. That's lame. It's like, yeah, like the image of it was kind of this like nerdy, geeky thing, and it didn't really have much of an appeal to it to people outside. I think the more of the engineering community or, certain people that kind of find an interest in that. But, the Roadster really, I mean, I have a Roadster now just because that's the, more of a sentimental value piece. That's really, to me, the car that turned things around and made electrification more appealing to the masses and really drove a path forward.
Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, no, that was amazing. I one of the things that stood out for me with that EV1 was the acceleration. Like I had never seen or wait, that for people that are like, no, that's nerdy and geeky. I'm like, just watch what it does when it's got like a Lamborghini or Ferrari or whatever you want to say, and it just.
I mean, it was definitely over the next like couple of decades where being a nerd actually became cool, right? I think that it was definitely had its stigma about it, right? But I think once the .com bubble and everything else, then all these nerds were super rich, right? It changed the dynamics of a lot of viewpoints. So.
There you go. The nerds will inherit.
Right.
Excellent. So I'm curious. So batteries, lithium batteries, like that has been your background. That's you said you tried to get out and it kind of pulled you back in. So is there something unique about the approach that you guys are taking or the tech that you're using as it relates to kind of solving the problem with the tuk-tuk?
Yeah, I think that ultimately what I've seen is by studying the market and what everyone else is doing, which I think is honestly incredible though, because I look at the India market right now and you have some leaders out there, and the battery swapping thing was not my idea. I mean, you look at Gogoro and Taiwan. I think just really doing an exceptional job from an overall solution standpoint, and then Sun Mobility with Chetan Mani out there really driving electrification forward, and I think these are kind of the pioneers of this tech and driving that forward. So I get the privilege of kind of get to stand on the shoulders of these guys and what they've done before, and just to improve upon what I see as the gaps in the solutions and everything else. So looking at the application, it's finding the right solution for the application that's cost effective and makes it very really just a simple design, I think, overall. And so at the heart of that is our thermal technology. I mean, you're looking at India with higher average temperatures across the country and huge variability across the country as well from a temperature standpoint. And then again, you're talking about dirt roads, a lot of so there's an environmental concern, I think, more than anywhere else in the world. And then getting the price point to where it needs to be and optimizing for that. I think, with the energy as a service model, we offload the upfront cost of the battery. So we as a company are spreading that over with our battery lease. So we can handle a little bit higher battery prices, which is not too big of a deal we play with. But as long as our retrofit kit solution is meeting the performance requirements of the country and also that price target where, the average driver can go in and get a, financing fairly simply for, roughly around $800-900 US dollars.
So we've sort of jumped ahead a little bit into the tech, but maybe for others listening that aren't familiar with the tuk-tuk, Is that what it is? The tuk-tuk? Is that the right
Yeah, it's
the three-wheel vehicle?
My dad says it the same way: tuk-tuk, auto rickshaw, three-wheeler. In Nigeria they call it something different. I forgot the name of it. I haven't really focused too much on that market yet, but it's kind of the staple vehicle in these countries for taxi services, right? And more like the last mile. So you're looking at the 1 to 5 kilometer travel range and seating, somewhere around 3 people on average. I mean, but sometimes they squeeze, upwards of like 8 people on these things, and just really overloaded. But it's, to me, it's one of the funnest methods of transportation. I mean, it's an open air vehicle, and whenever I go, I always ride in one. So, it's really just a conversion of a rickshaw, right? So it came in from something that like a pulled carriage, and then evolved to on it, and then like a motorcycle, and then really just evolved into its own vehicle over time. So, and India is the largest, manufacturer and distributor of these things globally. Bajaj is the leader in that, and I think India alone is somewhere around, if I remember correctly, it was somewhere around 600,000 vehicles manufactured a year, with 50% of that staying in country, and about 50% of it being exported to countries like Egypt and Nigeria and Sri Lanka and Bangladesh. So,
and how many of these are roughly would you say are on the road?
Yeah, so that it's really difficult to say. Not everyone's registering these things, and it's kind of this wild east, I guess we could call it. But it's our strategy team says somewhere around 6 million auto rickshaws that are running CNG, diesel, and petrol, and then about 1.5 million or so that are running electric. But it's kind of this low performance electric where they're about 500 watts, and they're all on lead acid batteries, and they have kind of set routes that they run because they're really low speed vehicles. So we're electrifying for performance. I mean, it's got to meet the same performance as a petrol diesel auto rickshaw.
And I mean, would I be correct in assuming that the existing versions, not the battery, but the internal combustion engine versions of this, are not super efficient? They're pretty heavy polluters. Would that be accurate? Or
yeah, I think so. You have a small percentage that are still two-stroke, which are ultimately the dirtiest. But yeah, I mean, they're little. I think if I remember correctly, like 15 horsepower engines. I mean, the CNG are definitely much cleaner than your petrol and diesel. But yeah, it's there. Of the 16 most polluted cities on Earth, 14 of them are in India, and it's it's mostly these motorcycles and auto rickshaws. So, I think about 30% of it is due to the light mobility sector alone.
And so maybe you touch on this, and I overlooked it, but so did you pursue the rickshaw? Like, what was the reason for pursuing the rickshaw versus a more conventional vehicle?
Yeah, I think, because when you look at the market, it's pretty varied from a transportation aspect. I was looking at the leaders in the market. So you look at Bajaj, TVS, Piaggio. There's a few others, but those three alone dominate the market entirely. And when we were doing our measurements and really understanding what the solution could look like, we saw commonality between them, in which we could create a retrofit kit that would fit basically all three makes. And now we're just kind of refining and defining what the different models would look like, but we're pretty sure that they'd fit most of the models as well within that. So creating one single solution for all these vehicles was key to that, and really being a mass adopter. When you look at the motorcycle market or the scooter market, there's so much variability in how these things are designed, that coming up with a single solution with them was nearly impossible to do.
Got it. Okay. And so, so we've talked about tech, we've talked about your background. So What are the challenges that you've been running into, or the obstacles that what are the kind of the biggest things you've had to overcome, or you're still trying to overcome?
Yeah, I mean, I think in the beginning it was getting funding, and funding. It was like, here in the States, it was like, well, I don't know anything about India. I don't, you know, most people were pretty adverse to investing in a U.S. company going to India, and then vice versa. Indian investors were like, well, first of all, you're not here in India. Second of all, you don't have revenue. So I was kind of in this spot where like, I'm not sure what to do anymore. And I really don't want to work for someone else at this point. So that was the big one. But finding more impact investors, and asking around, and kind of more strategizing toward like clean tech, and more just making sure that the mission and those things match. So that was kind of taken care of. And now, I mean, with COVID, bringing on our Indian team, I think that was the biggest one. I haven't even met my CEO and co-founder in India here. So, we've been talking for months now, every week, multiple days a week, and all this good stuff. But there's been definitely a lot of trust going back and forth, and so yeah, I mean, I've been really just taking the trust thing to a whole new level. But it was when between Pankaj and I, he's CEO of the India operations. He was just running Polaris out there for about 9 years. Before that, Yamaha, and he's been in the two-wheeler space for over 25 years. So he's extremely experienced. But the best thing is that we really align on value structures, right? And we first started talking mostly on other things, like mostly Vedic philosophies, and with its core to India, and really just on a personal level. And so I think that's really helped create a level of trust beyond what normally would be there. So and then again, getting into creating the Indian entity, and getting used to how business is developed and run in India is completely different. See a lot of really old school British influences, and I think the bureaucracy can be pretty deep here versus here in the States. But I think a lot of that is because we have a lot of things that are enforceable here in the States from a business standpoint. You have IP, you have different contractual aspects that can be fairly enforceable fairly easily here. But in India, I think that's a lot more difficult, getting that support. So I can understand the level of, being cautious on getting the right people involved, and getting the right structures created. So,
Yeah, I
but
think it's interesting. I mean, obviously nobody could have predicted pandemic, but the fact that what we talked about earlier, that the critical nature of that relationship that you have, the types of people that share that vision, and they're good people that are trying to solve a problem when you're aligned. I would imagine that that helped weed out a lot of the people that would have been under consideration, and you just have this level of trust that you know. I'm sure it's helped a
it,
little bit, as challenging as it's
it,
been.
oh, no, it definitely does. And when you lead with that, I think some people can kind of BS a little bit, but it doesn't take much more than a couple meetings to really see through that. So, and I mean, luckily, I haven't run into anyone. I think that I've been very lucky in the way that the people I'm working with are completely aligned, and really passionate about what they're doing, and I think are kind of inspired by what we're the kind of mission and the dream that we have here. So um, very happy about that. I think now we're in the situation where we're developing teams here in the U.S. and in India, and really seeing how we can have really increased communication between both teams, and really just be operating as one team between the whole thing. So I think getting a solid intranet working between both groups, that sharing files,
Still with
and
me, Porter?
yeah. really, take advantage of the core talent from both sides here. So
Excellent.
yeah.
And we didn't cover this. Are you currently in market, or have you got product in there in the streets, so to speak, or?
No, we have. We're bringing in our A samples now. We got prototypes for the retrofit kit and the battery. We're getting our A samples done here. I've basically redesigned the battery module though pretty completely, so to incorporate a few extra features that will allow us some future growth technology possibilities. So we're getting in that in the works, and hopefully we'll have some vehicles on the road here in the next couple months, and get some battery sales going as well. So see where that goes. But yeah, looking right now at a location here, maybe a couple tens of thousands of square feet for some manufacturing, and then build that out in India, and hopefully by the end of this year we could have basically the full solution ready to go in India.
Wonderful. So what does success look like for you in terms of having that impact, getting out there? What's your measure for we've really accomplished something here?
Yeah, I think I would love to see. I tell this to a lot of people here is like getting off the plane and basically getting in, and you just see electrification everywhere, from the scooters, motorcycles, the auto rickshaws, and really doing what we can to electrify everything as much as possible. I would love to see these countries with reliable grid, sustainable energy technology. Let's see, like India is going to be the largest from a population standpoint by the end of 2021. They're going to surpass China here this year, later this year, in population size. And there's just no way that a population like that could live as wasteful as we do here in the United States from an energy standpoint. We need to be able to basically like in Africa, where they basically leapfrogged any sort of lined communications network to just cell phones, right? They totally bypassed certain technologies to get to the latest and greatest. And I think doing the same here, where you're going directly to renewables, and instead of reinvesting in the grid, come up with a way of having a distributed renewable grid network, and really just putting modern electrification not only through infrastructure, mobility sectors, and wherever possible. So
and how are you? I mean, obviously, in the States, we kind of, there's a lot of things going on in terms of the perceptions around clean energy and solar and all these other things. But what is it like in India in terms of like the interest in this, or is there resistance, or how would you sort of define it being different from here?
Yeah, I think there is a push. I think there's a lot of false information out there regarding like hydrogen and that as a solution, where ultimately, if you're investing in hydrogen, you're just going to lose your money. It's not the efficiencies across the board. There's just no way it can be competitive with a pure electric play. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I mean, you can people, there's a lot of false narratives. So I think there's some apprehension on what is the right electrification path forward. But there's a big push by the government. I mean, there's FAME 2 subsidies for electrification. India wants all new vehicles on the road by 2030 to be all electric. So there's a push towards that, and there's incentivizations behind it as well. So, people are generally pretty excited about it. There's a lot of new companies focused around electrification technology in India, and so there is a big push. I think we'll be seeing, I think, a little bit more government support and investment in that as well. I think in addition to the FAME 2 subsidies, I know that Pankaj is working on kind of getting all interested parties within the retrofit space, electrification space together to to really enable these technologies a lot, to be adopted a lot cleaner within the country. I mean, right now we're kind of, when you register a vehicle, there's a vehicle chassis number and there's also a motor number that's registered. And so when we do our retrofit, that motor number is not relevant anymore. So it's like, how do we register the retrofit kit now? So there's some intricacies about how we're going to be able to offer the solution, but so things like that and fine tuning these kind of bureaucratic dynamics, I think. But there's I mean, gung ho. I think the electric mobility two-wheel space has been pretty much the only real growth market within India over the last year. I think it's grown by about 30%, if I remember correctly. So, yeah, big desire for it. I mean, in northern India, they're able to see the Himalayas, and people are like, wow, I didn't realize that the mountains were that close and that visible. So, it's a big deal.
There you go. And so is there, in terms of you going into this space, is there a lot of competition for kind of specifically what you're trying to solve, or is it people trying to do add-ons? They do it for this thing now, and we're going to try and do it for these three-wheelers, or?
Yeah, we're kind of hitting a lot of solutions at once. So like Sun Mobility would be our closest, company doing the same kind of deal with an energy as a service, but we're the only one doing energy as a service and a retrofit kit solution. So typically, if they're doing retrofit kits, they're just doing all-out sales with the batteries, which it's a pretty high upfront cost for a lot of people, and so I think that's going to really slow down adoption of the technology. So I think for me, key was bringing the cost down, to being fairly negligible. 1/3 the cost of a new vehicle, but then also, allowing the daily operational costs to be also very competitive. So, I think, we're the only ones really doing all of that at once, but I think that there's going to be more to follow. I mean, it seems India is such a big place. It seems almost daily that I find out about a new electrification player. So, I don't want to say the more the merrier because I'll end up eating my words, I'm sure. But yeah, it's a good thing for the country for sure.
Yeah, excellent. So what, if you were to, so first of all, how long have you been on this journey with this particular company?
Yeah, for a year now, solidly for the year. But the thought and the market and doing this stuff has been on my mind for over 4 years now at this point. So there had a lot of definition and basis to go off before really getting into it.
Yeah. So I'm curious, has there been sort of one of those moments or those aha moments or is there something that sort of really surprised you in the last few years on this journey, something you weren't expecting?
There is. I can't say it. It's we have a technical solution that is going to, I think, really, there was an aha moment. Because if you do straight battery swapping for your entire 80 to 100 kilometer range per day, it turns out to be a very capital intensive venture, because now you have to carry not only the batteries in the vehicle, but you have to have n number of batteries in your battery swapping kiosk for everybody, right? So that's a lot of upfront costs. We have found a method to eliminate a lot of that excess battery, to where now we only need to offer about 10 to 20% the battery swapping capabilities. So on a single battery module, now we can hit 120 kilometers. So that was a big aha moment for sure. Yeah.
That was well explained, but not really. Don't want to give away too much.
Yeah, trying to just to need to maintain some sort of competitive edge. I mean, we got a lot of investors involved here, and I'd hate to,
I hear you.
A profitable company. So
question, and I'm sure you've probably got some opinions on this. Like, what is the long-term impact, or how do you foresee addressing the challenge that often is talked about in terms of disposal, or as these batteries decrease in their efficiency, their range? Is there a solution there? Is it an easy solution? Is it something we're still figuring out?
Yeah, I think I think the battery technology is there. I mean, with the from a capacity standpoint, for the light mobility market, that's not really an issue from a life cycle analysis and decreasing our impact on mining requirements, right, to keep new battery solutions on it. And so, actually, with our when a battery gets to about 80% of its original capacity, we will take that battery offline, and with one of these battery swapping kiosks, we'll actually go and be able to sell energy using that systems to communities that don't have access to any energy. So we tie that with solar. Now we can offer a more or less microgrid solution for villages at a fraction of the cost of what they'd be paying if they had grid access. So I'm pretty excited about that, and that would give another probably we're targeting somewhere around at least another 10 years, hopefully, on that solution to about 60% of the original capacity. And then after that, then you have this battery module, and I'm working with our vendors and also some recycling companies on optimizing the reclaiming and making that battery solution as recyclable as possible and as efficient as possible, right? So working with plastic suppliers and putting a high percentage of regrind back into new product, and then recycling the battery cells as much as possible and getting each one of those elements back into the lithium ion supply chain. So doing what we can, being as sustainable of a company as possible. The nice thing about being an energy as a service company is we own that product from cradle to grave, so we have control not only with what goes into it, but how it gets dealt with afterwards. So and optimizing that, and that's part of our public benefit mission as well, is reduce our impact on the environment at the same time. So
that's great. And so is that something you've got, obviously the batteries going in the vehicles, and then the secondary use, is that secondary use something that you're actively promoting? Is that part of kind of who you are, or is it more that when someone asks the question, hey, this is what we're doing to kind of fulfill that vision, that goal we have of less impact?
Yeah, I mean, right now it's a couple slides on our big deck, but it's I think once we have the network up and going, I think it'll become more of a sales piece. When someone asks you what are you doing from a sustainability standpoint, or what are you doing with the batteries, it's that is the answer, right? But I feel like we're doing so much. There's only so much we can say, right? And in a certain amount of time. So it's not always what we lead with, right? But to me, it's core to what we're doing, because you want to be basically using and utilizing this technology as much as possible without being too wasteful, right? I mean, if that 80% module then just went back into recycle, that's not the most efficient use of that. I mean, there's still much more life within that battery module capable. So really prolonging and finding out how we can extend the life of all product is going to be most beneficial, right? So
yeah, that's great. And so do you foresee so that's a great sort of secondary market, I think a great way to sort of reuse and get more life out of the battery. Do you see you guys doing things beyond the three-wheel vehicle? Do you see kind of moving into other places, or maybe that secondary use becomes something potentially larger as a market or an opportunity?
Yeah, we have some future plans that we're kind of looking at. There's a lot of different directions we can go, and we need to be aware of that and make sure we really assess the market at that time and be very strategic about how we do that. Yeah, we have some plans that we're looking at for what the company looks like in 10 years plus, and where our core where our biggest benefit to the world would be, for sure.
That's great.
I think stationary storage is a big aspect of that, but again, we're not in the market to compete with an an LG or Samsung or Tesla or any of these big players in the market, right? But there is, there's a bunch of market out there that is not being addressed because these big players are after large installations. But there's a lot of smaller applications as well that may make some sense. So we're looking at.
That's great. No, I think we've all seen that, there's always these kind of, whether you call them niche or tertiary markets, but there's, I think that's sort of that innovative spirit. And I think you see it in countries like India, more than a lot of others, that they're taking things that, in our world we just throw out or, go buy another one. And there's a whole other use for this. And, I think it's great that you guys are, thinking about that. I think that's critical. You don't want anyone to be calling you out for sort of you're solving one problem and creating another problem.
That is, and you can't be across your supply chain. Like there's going to be processes, we have to work on that aren't the cleanest of processes, but at least, our use of plastics, there's just really ultimately no getting around it right now, but at least, working with our plastics suppliers on, optimizing that and creating a little bit more of an efficient and less, polluting aspect of that supply chain. So I think as long as, we have to start from somewhere, realize the realities of it. There's just no getting around it. There's, you can't get caught up in this like nirvana fallacy that, the best solution has to be perfect from the start. That's just ridiculous. But electrification gives us a pathway to that getting closer to perfection. Using fossil fuels for all of our energy is just not going to get us there at all. So why? Yeah, you're not going to sell me on continued usage of that, right?
Yeah, I think we've got this, unfortunately, this very instant gratification kind of culture, and and they love the sort of the optimizing and the analytics and stuff, and they want it to be the silver bullet. Mm-hmm. It's like, this is like 200 plus years in the making here. Like, we're not going to undo this.
No.
And if we could, that would be wonderful. But
yeah, but it does give us something to do for the next 200 years, right? So, it's definitely, it has a path, right, to, becoming cleaner as civilization and getting there, right? But, yeah, there's no silver bullet at all. It's like, yeah, of course. There's, of course, our energy creation right now is, predominantly fossil fuel based. Of course, electric cars are going to be not wonderful because of that. But we already come up with solutions with that, and we're coming up with solutions for the mining issues and all. There's a real drive to make this work, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel. This is the right pathway. You can't deny that. And I think if you're told otherwise, you're being spoiled by other interests. So.
There's other motivations there.
Yeah.
So what is you said sort of 10 years out, you're seeing opportunities like what do you foresee, or what do you sort of this legacy that you're trying to create? When people talk about Power Global 25 years from now, like what would you like them to be saying, or what would you like that impact to have been?
Yeah, I think core to this is bringing this technology and cleaning up the environment, but again, at the same time is bringing up standards of living in these countries. And I think globally, ultimately, we are really we're at a whole nother level. It's just kind of ridiculous. So I think in a lot of ways, to me, it's kind of shameful that where the lifestyle life that I have versus anyone else in some other country, the discrepancy is so huge, right? So looking back, I would like to see a lot more of an equal and standard of living across the board, right? But one that isn't so wasteful, So not only do we have to kind of clean up our habits, but we also have to introduce a more of a modern and cleaner way of doing things.
I love the idea that right now there's a lot of like haves, but a heck of a lot more have-nots. And the only reason the haves can have that is because of the have-nots. They're working at the lower rates. They're dealing with all these other things. But to find a place where there's that equality, there's that balance,
we can have that without exploiting a population of people. I mean, there's technology now. It's just, getting to that point and really raising up. I mean, even with here in the States, I think it's we've really done a disservice from an educational standpoint. And the unemployment rate we have is a structural unemployment. We're not we're not we're not educating people enough, and we're not allowing people to grow with the technology, right? We don't need more line workers. We need more people that have technical capabilities that can, support the technical infrastructure and from a service standpoint and all this other to really enable these technologies. And that's where we need to head is educating people more and being, like we can get people, from doing manual labor to being more educated and supporting, these technologies in the long. It's going to be so much more beneficial for everybody. So, we don't have to exploit a population for the benefit of everyone. But, again, we have to get away from being really this like single use country, right? I mean, we can't. This is like not even sustainable. I couldn't imagine what these highly populated countries would look like if they were all single-use countries. We would be living in a complete shithole. I mean, ultimately, the world would be nothing but a trash container. So
I think it's interesting to me that the juxtaposition between the fact that sort of nature is very efficient, nature optimizes everything, and then we are a product, obviously, of nature, and we optimize in the way our bodies function and we deal with the environment. Yet we have used our intellectual abilities and our knowledge to really create some really shitty solutions we'll just throw that out there. There's a lot of really clunky short-term thinking. And, it's interesting. My wife and I, we were watching YouTube the other night, and we stumbled into it, sort of preloaded something. And it was just video from like 1930s New York, just someone walking around with a camera. There was no narration or music.
I saw that as well. I think and they color enhanced it and everything else. Yeah.
And what blew me away was looking at the fact that, okay, there's cars everywhere, yet there were like no lines on the road. There was no real semblance. People were just walking out into traffic. The exhaust fumes. And you could see that it was sort of they'd thrown the technology out there, and the car was 20, 25 years in, but the rest of it hadn't really caught up. There hadn't been this collective or cohesive thinking about like, well, how is this going to impact the way we interact in the space? How are we going to keep people safe? And I feel like it was just really eye-opening to me to see that. And then ironically, it sort of then it showed us a few of those, and then our kids came in, and it transitioned into those like 1930s kind of Futurama illustration animated things of the future, where it was like, these super efficient, roads that build themselves out over the desert, and, we deliver food. It goes from a train to a rocket ship. And it was just fascinating to see the way, whatever the algorithm was, it said, let's show you one and show you at the same time the future that they were imagining.
Right.
And so I guess my point is that we have the capacity to think of these things, these cleaner, more efficient, places, but we operate in this world of like, very clunky, antiquated stuff that.
Yeah, it's a value structure, right? I mean, you look at, there are certain countries where, they're banning single-use plastics. They don't even allow them into the country anymore. Like there are countries that are even more advanced than the U.S. from this standpoint. I mean, they're leading the way in sustainability, right? And we could take a cue or two from these countries and how to do things. But it really just comes down to a value standpoint. I mean, most people, or in education, right? I think that voting with how we consume, right? I mean, it's I avoid single use as much as possible. I mean, I'm don't go to certain establishments because of certain things and the way they do things. So it's really just voting with your dollar what it's going to be in the future, right? And I think if you get enough people voting with their dollar, with what they, consume or what they, put their money towards, is that could help drive the direction. I mean, ultimately, we are a capitalistic society, which is not, to me, not a bad thing. I think that, once you include a beneficial aspect to capitalism that has a goal that is for humanity and not just for personal gains,
Mm-hmm.
I think to me that is like kind of the utopia, because you need a society that is growing, that is creating and moving. I mean, you can't have life without movement, right? So you need to have these supporting structures in place, but it needs to be a benefit for all.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so I want to wrap. We're a little bit over here, but what for people watching this, is there how can they support you? How can they learn more about you? Is there anything that we can do to help support what you're doing?
I'll send you exact wiring instructions of my bank account, and no, I think that ultimately the beneficial is just keep researching this. Like, if you really are interested in making a difference and being more efficient with how we do things and less wasteful, I think that being on that, right, I think continue to research that and continue to incorporate it into your life, right? I think there's so many challenges in the world right now that there's no lack of direction, for sure, right? I mean, there's from food to medicine to you're talking about just the way we use energy, and I mean, I could start 5 companies right now just to tackle everything in my head that needs to be fixed if we want to be a sustainable and prosperous civilization here. Otherwise, we're just going to kill ourselves.
For me, I've thought about this. It's like, for me to be able to say that at the end of my life, I did something to try and change it, and I had an impact. That's, I don't want my children or my grandchildren looking to me and saying, why didn't you do anything? And I love the fact that the generation coming up is asking that question, and they're not backing down. They're getting in people's faces and saying, you did this, and you're not going to be here to deal with it, and we're going to have to deal with it.
Yeah. I mean, that kind of leads me to like what another lesson learned over the last year is that you cannot allow something that you don't believe in or you don't agree with to just go without you saying anything. I think it needs to be called out. I think in the past, I kind of just thought, that's their opinion, they're right to it. But by not calling it out, it kind of in a lot of ways empowers that and allows that to flourish. I think when enough people are being honest with what they believe in, we can kind of keep these kind of almost these forces at bay. You know what I mean? We just have to be very honest and upfront with people. I think that was, and don't, you don't have to be like super confrontational, but like, you just be like, no, that's totally incorrect. This is why, like, and leave it at that,
What's that old line about like shining light? If there is darkness, you have light. About like not allowing these things to just stay in the dark.
No, and that you just exactly expose it, right? I mean, sometimes I feel like I may be a little too vocal on some things, but we really are at a point with technology and humanity where we have to speak up, because the communication is so distorted now, and you really need to really find the right things to grasp onto, right, and that you really believe in. So in order for those things to flourish, you have to be with it. So I don't know.
I agree. And so circling back to the very opening of this conversation, you said that you could talk and talk and talk. And I am the same way. And I feel like we need to have a follow-up where it's not about the technology. It's not about the batteries. It's really about kind of the much bigger kind of picture things, about sort of we as these beings that are sort of from all the things around us in the galaxy. And here we are, in this world, and how we interact with all that, how we do something with this amazing, crazy thing that happened, and here we are as human beings, and I feel like we could do a whole series about that.
Yeah, no, definitely. Anytime it would be great. I think that yeah, various philosophies are definitely very intriguing and very interesting to me. So, and there's a lot of them. So, but there's an interesting commonality between a lot of these ancient philosophies as well. So,
Yeah,
and that's kind of the guide,
it's
right?
not like this is a new thing. People have been doing this, talking about it, writing about it, thinking about it.
We've had the solutions for thousands of years. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Well, Porter, I'm gonna first of all thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Wonderful to chat with you and learn. And I thank you so much for the work that you're doing and your passion for solving these problems. And personally, I very much I resonate with your energy, and I appreciate that you're out there sharing that with others, and connecting like-minded people to work collectively to sort of be better stewards of this world that we have. So thank you.
Yeah, I mean, likewise, you are the connector. You're the one bringing this together. So I appreciate that. Absolutely, bring it to the light, right? So
there you go.
Awesome.
All right, my friend. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm gonna
take care.